Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. Let's go find a ladybug. Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. They live in gardens, weeds and shrubs. Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. There are 5,000 species worldwide. Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. The number of spots identifies the kind. Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. Ladybugs are beetles with 6 legs. Ladybugs can mix yellow, orange, pink, brown, black, white, blue, or red.
I think from a very young age, I was very interested in science and certainly the natural world and what I could glean from going out. And I spent a lot of time on my own, going out on hikes in the woods and just around my own yard, and loved to see what different plants were, and in the garden how things would grow. And so I think from as far back as I can remember, I was always drawn to science. I can think of two things in my youth, and one is on one of my many hikes out in the woods. I was sitting having my lunch, whatever lunch my mom packed for me, and just sitting by some bushes, and a stick started to crawl across the branch. And that was just the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I realized then it was, although I didn't know what it was because I'd never seen one before, but it was a walking stick, which is a very particular kind of insect that really looks like a stick. And I think from that moment on, I was very interested in insects. In terms of science and experiments, we had, I can remember behind our house, right by the foundation, there was a place where for some reason there was a problem with our pipes, and the muck from the kitchen sink would sort of bubble up by the foundation. And I realized at some point that tomato plants were growing there, and that if I put seeds in along the foundation that they would grow, and yet if you planted them out in the garden they didn't do very well. And so the idea that I did this experiment and proved that muck was good for tomatoes was really cool.
Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug.
Even in high school, we had to make we had a very good high school biology teacher, and we had to make leaf collections and insect collections. And there again, and so of course I did mine way over the top, and a lot of people didn't like it because you had to have the scientific name with both the genus and the species, and you had to write it in sort of italics but I loved it. I thought it was the idea that there was this system and that you could name things and identify things. I liked that. I liked that as well. Well, so after high school, I went to Oberlin College for an undergrad, and my biology was my undergrad degree. They didn't have an entomology program, and so I just did biology and took whatever classes that had to do with invertebrates or insects that I could find. And then I worked for a while for the Nature Conservancy, and then after that decided I did want to go on. And it was, so I liked working in the sort of front lines of conservation, and it was more of a policy sort of place. But I decided I really wanted to do research, and what I liked now and even back then was I like to be able to find answers that nobody else has found before. Not, it seems like with a lot of other things that you could do, you're just going over what other people have done. And what research gives you the opportunity to do is, no matter how small the question is that you're answering, that's your answer that nobody else has ever found. And that's what I find still to this day really cool. My first research was with moths. They weren't really butterflies. They were European corn borer, which is a pest of corn. And I worked with these little tiny wasps that would parasitize the eggs of the corn borer. And so you put them out. You put out little squares of parasitized eggs, and the wasps come out and they get the corn borer, and then you don't have to spray pesticides. And it's actually developed now, not just from my work, but from others too. And you can use these instead of pesticides to grow sweet corn, and a lot of organic growers use this method.
Let it bug, let it bug, let it bug.
Well, at that point, I just graduated and became Master of Science, Losey, and then I went on to the University of Maryland. So that was at Penn State University. Then I went on to University of Maryland and did work with predators, ladybugs, as it happens, which has become something that I've kept with for the rest of my career. And then I was Dr. Losey, and then I went to Wisconsin and became postdoc Losey, and then I came here to Cornell in 1997. So I'm involved in all three aspects of what's parts of the modern university. Certainly in parts of a land-grant university, which are, we do research, we do teaching of people on campus, and then we do extension, which is sort of education or outreach to people off campus. And so I see research as sort of the producer, the mill that produces the new data, and then we use that new data. It's sort of like the sap that comes from the maple trees, and as teachers and as extension people, we distill that sap down into the syrup, and then we provide that to both students on campus and to citizens off campus. They're sort of like the pancakes